about this and to understand that attention is the currency of the creator economy. Those that can capture it, leverage it, will benefit from this. And I submit to you somebody that you might know, Reese Witherspoon. And she's a pretty good actress. She's got this all-American girl next door vibe to her, right? And her story is really interesting because she's been able to leverage her fame into a very large social media following. It's easy for celebrities to do. They're already famous, they're good looking, they're out in media, and people already talk about them. So she has 29 million followers as of a couple days ago on Instagram. But what a lot of people don't know is Reese Witherspoon has a book club. Is anybody here in a book club? Okay, awesome. I see 2 women who raised their hands. I'm not in the book club. It's because it's for women. It's to share stories that empower women-centric stories, right? Really neat. There are 2.5 million members in our book club. 2.5 million. Okay, so she took 29 million followers from maybe 100 million fans globally into Instagram. She has 2.5 million members in her book club, and she does something really interesting. If you can command an audience that big, you can also make your own deals. So to be featured as an author in her book club, you have to agree to give her the first right to produce TV, film, and media products from it. This is fantastic. She's a shrewd businesswoman. And I'm sitting here thinking, is this exploitive? I don't think so, because if I'm an author, I would die to have 2.5 million people buy my book. That would shoot me up on every chart that's imaginable, right? So it's a good deal. It's a win-win situation, right? So her company, Hello Sunshine, was recently sold for almost $1 billion, $900 million. So let's retrace the steps here. You have fame, you're able to attract and create, control, leverage attention, you're able to focus it. You build around a tribe, a community. Her community is the book club. And this is the blueprint, so you follow this, you'll do really well yourself. And then with that, she's able to leverage that and to get the rights to TV, film, and media projects, and that's what she sold. Here's the other brilliant part. How does she know what TV shows and films to make? Well, she has 2.5 million people giving her feedback. So if it's good enough for her group and they're talking about it, there's buzz and there's energy, it's almost like a guaranteed deal. So she's also using lots of data to help her determine and make hits all the time. So somebody's not just buying the production company, they're buying this entire pipeline that's been tested and vetted. Pretty powerful stuff. So the question is, have I got your attention yet? Yeah, okay. I know you're here because you want to be able to do this, so I think I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. Number 2 is, have you guys heard of the stage effect? Does anybody here know what the stage effect is? Anybody? Okay, good. So I'll share something new with you. It's a concept I heard from a gentleman named Eric Leeds, and he speaks about storytelling. He's a masterful storyteller. So if you ever get the opportunity, just YouTube or Google him on YouTube, search him on YouTube, and you'll find that he does these talks from Mind Valley called storytelling. So he has a very simple formula, and it looks something like this. The quality of your presentation times the size of the audience equals your level of attraction. Okay? The quality of your presentation, what it is you have to say, teach, share with the world, and you multiply that by the size of your audience. I think Neil told me there's about 100 people here. And what's happening is we're not as independent thinkers as we'd like to believe. When 100 of you are looking in one direction, you're also like, there must be something important. Why did Neil put Chris on stage? Maybe there's a reason why. So then the question for you is, does audience size matter? Does it matter? Well, look at Yelp reviews. That's how I decide. And if there's not enough reviews of a high enough quality, I'm not going there. Amazon, I don't even worry about if the product's good anymore. I just look at how many reviews it has, and I trust it, and it's not failed me so far, or rarely ever has it failed me. And we even see this in the follower count. When people say followers don't matter, they're not being 100% honest with themselves, right? Would you rather take advice from someone who has 40 million followers or who has 200? It's instant credibility and it's social proof. So we cannot ignore these things as much as we'd like to say, well, it's just a vanity metric. And it's backed by some science. Dr. Caldino writes about this in his book, Influence, the Power of Persuasion, or the Psychology of Persuasion. He talks about it. We act in accordance with how other people act. So social proof is one of the 7 principles. We listen to people who have authority. And we want to be like other people, so we're in a room of people who think and act like us or who we'd like to be more like. So how big can your audience be? How big can it be? 100 people in this room? So Eric is a public speaker and he teaches public speaking, so he assumes the audience and the stage is people in a room. Well, I think it's much, much bigger than that. So I don't think it's 100 people. Even if it's a really, really big venue, I don't think it's 10,000 people. It's really effing big. Because you have the potential of reaching anybody who has an internet connection, who desires to learn what it is that you have to teach. So the stage effect can be ginormous. I'm not a best-selling author. I've been featured in Wall Street Journal. I've not been interviewed by anybody famous or anywhere. But I believe I'm in the position that I am today, and the job that I get to have is because I've learned how to create content, how to serve other people and grow a following, so that I get invited to do things I have no right to do. Number 3. Okay, so whenever we talk, I think it's important for us to have common definitions and terminology. So there's words that we'll be using a lot, and the 3 words I'm going to focus on today is brand, branding, and personal brand. And depending on the audience that I speak to, they have varying degrees of understanding of what these words are, but most of the times, I hate to say it, they have the wrong idea. So let's begin here, okay? So what is a brand? Does anybody know what a brand is? Okay, go ahead. Reputation. Let's start. Excellent. Anybody else? Yes. Yeah, I think Jeff Bezos said that, right? What they say is like when you're out of the room. Excellent. I think those. Okay, you guys are doing a great job there. So I just go to the person who literally wrote the book on brand many, many years ago, Martin Neumeyer. He says a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, company, or organization. It's a feeling. So it gets a little bit tricky. And the reason why we can't control people is because it's their feelings. They have a right to feel whatever they want. So it's this gut feeling. So it's not what you tell me what it is, it's what you say what it is. So I'm gonna finish my presentation in an hour, and you're all going to walk away thinking something about me. Something good, something not so good, something terrible, I don't know. But I can't control that. I can't influence it though, and that's what the process of branding is. So when we get into like the concept of personal branding, people are like, well, I don't believe in personal branding. Is that thing real? And I'll debate you to the end. So here's the thing, if we accept Marty Neumeyer's definition that it's gut feeling, well, we all have a gut feeling about everybody in this room, if you met them. The person sitting next to you, across from you, from a different table, you have a feeling. When enough of these people have the same feeling, then you have a brand, right? Look, your mom and dad think about you a certain way, and no matter how old you are, if you're 50 or 95, your parents are still alive, you're still their little kid, right? And maybe it's your little brother or sister, you're always the hero in their eyes because you're always doing things first. You always pave the way for them. But what we want to do is we want to align these feelings as much as we can, and there's ways for us to do that. So why do brands matter? Because brands create preference, brands create loyalty, they eliminate competition, and they help you to command a price premium. This is how you know you have a brand. And we do a simple check in the corporate world. If adding your logo, which is a representation of your brand, it's not your brand, adds value to the thing, you have a brand. The more value it adds, the more powerful your brand is. A t-shirt you can buy for $3 probably at Costco. But Nike throws their logo on it, just a simple solution. The exact same t-shirt is worth $20. Dolce & Gabbana put their logo on it, it's well worth $200. You see how the game goes, right? Same t-shirt, more or less. Okay, so what is branding? A lot of people think that brands are created. Like, let's create a brand. Let's build a brand. I'm particular about words. I don't like using those words, even though I've used them myself before. Branding is not an act of creation, it's an act of discovery. It's an act of discovery. You've got to go find the story. And what happens is when people rebrand, they're not changing the brand. What happens is companies grow in size. They lose touch with why they were created in the first place. They lose touch with the founder story. So when an external agency comes in and rebrands a company, most of the time, it's because they've lost their way. No one is connected to that story anymore, and they have to go back to the past and find it. So finding and telling the founder story is the part of the branding. And the cool thing is the founder, that's you, that's all of you. So whether you're a company of 100, or 1,000, we got to figure out what your story is. And unfortunately, it's not so easy to do because it requires you to know who you are to have that level of introspection and self-awareness, and that's a difficult thing to do. Like, who are you? What are your beliefs, opinions, and values, and preferences? Greek philosopher Thales was asked, what is the most difficult thing to do? And his answer was to know yourself, to know thyself. Consequently, what's the easiest thing to do? Give advice. Right? It's very easy to give advice. So what we have to do is we have to journey inward before we communicate outward. And this is a very difficult thing to do. Okay. Why brands matter? Well, the reason why we buy what we do, why we buy what we buy, is because in doing so, we're looking for meaning, for purpose, and for identity. The actions that we take say something about us, and it's not excluded to the things that we buy and participate in. And so the question is, if I buy this, what does this make me? Do you ever ask yourself that question? Are you paying attention to the things that you buy? Okay, let's play a game, okay? Somebody who owns this car, what does that say about them? Just shout out whatever you think. If I own a Tesla, what does that say about me? One or two things. No gas. Go on. It's true.
Yep, good style.
Good style. Rich. So successful, right? Anything else?
You like Elon Musk.
You like what?
You like Elon.
You like Elon, sort of. Used to. Less these days, yeah? Scared of horsepower? Are you sure about that? Have you watched those drag strip videos? Like the Bugatti beats it, but not many cars beat it, right? I thought many of you were gonna say like eco-conscious, like we're aware, you know? There are brands that we participate in that signal to other people, you know, you're like a diesel carbon polluting person and I'm not, you know? We say those things, right? Conversely, many years ago, if you drove a Porsche, it also said other things about you, not flattering things, right? So what you buy says something about you. What does this say about you? Patagonia clothes are a little bit more expensive than what you can buy, so they have a brand for sure. What does it say about you? Sustainability. You care about the environment for sure.
Granola eater.
Granola eater, probably, right? Probably climbs rocks, is barefoot sometimes. You just care, and you're willing to pay more. Or you want to communicate to people that you care and are willing to pay more even though you don't. So signal something to other people, because you want to join a tribe of people who think a certain way, right? Are they the most fashionable clothes or not? I wish they were. They're just not. I love Patagonia as a company. What does this say about you when you buy this? Lactose intolerant. That's a functional thing, but it says something else because we have choices, right? In a first world country in the 21st century, we have a lot of choices, especially if we have the means to. It says something. This is more expensive, but also says like maybe drinking products from another animal is not a good thing. And you know, maybe cows aren't, you know, there's a lot of issues there, right? Maybe you care about animals, maybe you don't, maybe you care about exploitation, or maybe you care about how this affects your body and what it does to your body. So what you buy says something about you. So Annie Leppo says this, every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want. Do you believe that? Yeah. I do. So we need to be more conscious of that. And the reason why we're going to do this is because then we have to start to say, like, if somebody wants to join my tribe, buy my services or products, what does that say about them? And do they have a preference for what it is that you offer versus your competitor? Now, I've been taking somewhat of an informal survey. Most of you are in economics, finance, mortgage, broking, you know, those kinds of things, mortgage brokerage, right? So there's a lot of competition in this room. So why would one person pick you over the next available competitor? Will it only be on price? It's hard to argue numbers sometimes if you can get somebody a better rate, right? It's hard. But we have choice. So you need to give them a reason why to choose you. And now I'm going to kind of move into the personal branding part. So we understand what the word brand means, it's a gut feeling. So what is personal branding? The key there is in yellow, it's about the person, and the person has to have a personality. And these are critical. Okay, most of us were raised in such a way that we were afraid to stand out. If you stand out, you're the weird person, you're riding the short bus, all kinds of issues. So we've learned to get along, or to go along to get along. But I'm telling you right now, all those things that you learn are completely wrong and are going to be detrimental in you developing your personal brand. We have to not just look at our differences, we have to lean into our differences, what makes us weird and unique. Okay. Do you believe that personal brands can be as iconic as Nike? And that symbol is worth a lot of money. What do you think? Some people say yes, some people are not sure, some people don't want to say. All right. Why do you say yes? Just because? Trump, yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you can do it, I mean. Right? Okay, so let's look at it, all right? So let's play a game. I'm going to show you a slide and just yell out. There's no prizes for this. Just yell out whatever you think. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you a clue, you tell me who you think it is, right? So we'll start easy. Who is this? All right, this table's sharp. This table up front, all right, I'm gonna keep my eyes on you. Okay, they're here for a reason. Look at it. Okay, here we go, here's the next one. Of course, he can own a red cap. I took off the logo, the Make America the MAGA slogan, and you could still know who it is. This is scary. You know the comedian Andrew Schultz? He's like, I can't get behind Biden. I just can't. Yeah, what did he say? His merch game don't work. He got no merch. That's the current generation. That's how powerful it is, guys. You know? Merch game's on point with Trump. Whether you like him or not. Easy, right? Look at this. Even your silhouette can say something about you. So how many of you are conscientious of your silhouette? So you don't have to do it right now, but do it sometime later today. Stand in front of a bright light. Take a selfie so that you're mostly silhouetted. Can anybody tell it to you? If not, think about the shape. When you work with concept artists in designing characters for animated films, they don't draw the character first, they just draw shapes. They look at the shapes. Like Kung Fu Panda is an excellent example. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, look at DreamWorks, the making of, or the art of Kung Fu Panda, and you'll see mantis, snake, panda. You can just tell them by their shapes, and they design it this way. So think about the shape, the silhouette. Who is this? No, okay. No, okay.
Target.
No. Okay, very good. I'll give you another clue. I'm a little surprised you don't know this. Who is this? Okay, you guys need to update your art library and archive information. Yes. You know that. She's everywhere right now. Her name is Yo-Yo Kusuma. And she is the most successful female fine artist. The most successful. And she's known for dots. Incredible, right? Maybe not to this crowd. But to me, like, you know, clearly not to this crowd. Right? You got Trump, but you don't know your artist. He says something. Now we know what we're buying here. Okay. All right. So do you know who this is? Round. Very well. These are Gandhi's glasses. You see? They're original, right? Do you know who this is? Look at this. Just the silhouette and the coat. Maybe the cigarette. Maybe if I made the yellow dot bigger, you wouldn't be able to figure it out. But if you cover it, you're like, yeah, I still know who it is. Isn't that incredible?
Who is it?
James Dean. Could be the hair. So the question is, how far can this go? Can we abstract it so much that you can own a color? Can you own a color? Who is this?
UPS.
Who said that? Are you colorblind? UPS is not this shade. I'm a designer, so I pay attention to colors. You know, so I'll give you another clue. Really close. She owns the color nude. Kim Kardashian, can you believe that? Snap. Oh my God, because they'll pay her a ton of money just for her to pick colors. How crazy is that? Power of personal brand. So can a personal brand be as iconic as these multi-billion-dollar corporations who spend billions of dollars advertising? Yes. So the main difference is brands or corporations have a logo and a tagline. Personal brands have a face and a story. Your face, your story. So we got to learn how to take advantage of that, how to tell our story. Okay. So we're going to need to do some work. We need to find the founder's story. We need to find your story. And I used to teach storytelling, sequential design at Art Center. And I came upon this book, and it broke down story in the most simplistic way. And that's what I hope to be able to do for you, to make the complex simple, easy to apply. There are 3 components to storytelling and stories. You must have these 3, otherwise it will not work. You could try. Many art films do, and they fail. Character, want, and obstacle. So you have to have an interesting character that's unique, that feels 3-dimensional, and not a character type. They have to be filled with some kind of desire. They want something in their life, and usually they don't get what they want, they get what they need. They need to learn something. You might want fame, fortune, power, romance, but what you have to do is you have to learn things about self-acceptance, generosity, forgiveness. That's what you need to learn. And there's always an obstacle. If there's a want without an obstacle, there is no story, because the obstacle creates the conflict. Your customers want something. They want to move to a different place, a better school for their kids, a quieter neighborhood, more land, more privacy, less land. They're downsizing. They want a forever home. Whatever it is that they want, there's something that stands in their way. So this is good for you to tell your story and the obstacles you overcame and the lessons that you learned, but it's also great for marketing, because we got to figure out who the character we're serving, what their individual needs are, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday up front, which is to be specific. Who is it that you're serving? What is it they want? When we talk about, say, people who are in the health space, I want to serve people who want to be healthier. That's like everybody. Okay, I want to serve people who want to go to the gym. Still a lot of people. I want to help moms get back into their best shape ever so they can feel sexy about themselves. That is a very specific group of people. So this is what you want to do. You want to do what Seth Godin talks about. You want to split the market. You just keep cutting it down until you can see the person in your mind. If you can draw them and predict what they're going to do, that's how narrow you want to be. So that's the goal. Character, want, and obstacle. So who is the master of character design? This is where we should get into. Like, if we study whoever is good at this, and Jim Rohn said success leaves clues, let's go look for the clues. And I'm just gonna out myself because I don't know many of you. I'm a giant nerd. I'm really into comic books, so this is where this part gets kind of interesting and fun, at least for one person in the room, me. I love comic books, and so the master creator of characters is none other than Stan Lee. He's created some of the most iconic characters consistently. And I don't know if you've seen his talk at UCLA where he describes the origin of how Spider-Man was created. It's a fascinating story. I'll give you the highlights, the cliff notes, okay? He says the editor was like, we need more characters, Stan. We need to write more stories and sell more comics. Come up with another character. So he says the hardest thing to do with a character is to figure out their superpower. You start with their superpower. Once you figure that out, things start to fall in place. And this is going to be important for you to take note of. We're going to dive deeper into this in a little bit. So he's sitting there in his room, and he's looking at a fly, and the fly's crawling on the wall. He's like, that is a cool power. Would it be cool if we could get someone to crawl on the wall? So then he says the next part is you have to figure out a name. Okay? And this is also important. You have to figure out your superpower. You have to figure out the name. So he's like Fly Man, the Mosquito Man, Spider-Man. Okay? Then he says we have to figure out some personal problems. So he wanted to make this person not a man, but a teenager. Because teenagers have all kinds of problems, and this is great. So he takes it to the editor, and he's like, I have this idea, Spider-Man. He's like, Stan, it's a terrible idea. People hate spiders, and teenagers can only be sidekicks. They cannot be heroes. What does that guy know? Well, you know the rest of the story. So this is what we pull apart from that story, okay? You have a superpower. He's a wall crawler. His name is Spider-Man, and he has personal problems. This is drastically different than what DC does with their characters and why I think they're failing. Their characters largely are unrelatable to me as a person. Okay? I don't want to get into all that kind of stuff. So now I'm going to ask those of you that may or may not know something about Spider-Man, can you tell me Spider-Man's origin story? Does anybody know? Okay, go ahead.
He was at a science fair, and then he got bit by a spider. And,
What kind of spider?
no,
Okay, keep going. Radioactive spider. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then a few days later, he shot
Something like that. Shooting stuff, okay.
Then it goes one step further, which is how we decide to use the power.
Yeah.
And,
Okay, that's the abbreviated version of like what happened there. Okay, so I want to just nerd out for you a little bit. I want to tell you Spider-Man's origin story, and I'm gonna map it out for you on a story structure so that you'll figure out how to tell your story. Okay, it's fascinating because the more I look into this and I map it to people in the real world, and the ones who do it really well, they understand this either intuitively or they've studied it and figured it out. Okay, so Peter Parker is raised by his Uncle Ben and Aunt May because his parents died mysteriously in a plane crash. We don't know, right? So he's got a lot of love, but he's an orphan already. He's an orphan, he's kind of a scrawny kid, so he gets picked on. He's left out, but he's super smart. So he's ostracized. Immediately, we start to identify with this character, right? Okay. So that's his backstory, and this is what we need to figure out with you. Who were your parents? What happened in your early life that started to form who you are and how you think? This is really important. So he's designing him to be a very specific person, which gives the hero's arc of his story more weight and meaning. Imagine if he was raised by billionaires from his parents that were loving and good looking, and he was the most popular kid in school. Sort of. Sort of. Okay, very good. Okay, so then what happens to him is he gets bitten by a radioactive spider, and he's like, ooh, something feels weird. And he gains the proportionate strength and agility of a spider. He has also some other extra powers, like a spider sense, which is really cool. And this is what we call the inciting incident, the moment his life changes, when he leaves the ordinary world and he moves into the new world. And so you're going to be looking through your life for what is your inciting incident, the thing where everything changes. Nothing is the same again. And the first inclination is, I've been picked on, I've been felt left out. So he walks by and he sees this opportunity to join a wrestling match for $100. And he's like, I can definitely beat this person. So his first instinct is not to help people, it's to help himself. Right? And so of course he beats them, they become friends, all that stuff. And then he gets to put on TV shows and he's getting really self-important right now. He's making money, he's feeling great about who he is. So there's an opportunity for him to use his power for good. So while he's at the TV station kind of being mocked by fans, a thief runs past and the cop yells, hey, please stop him. He goes, you know what? That's your problem. You do your job. I'm gonna look out for me now. The cinematic version is a little bit different than this, but it's the same idea. I go back to the source material, if you will. So he has a relapse of judgment in stories like if you're an alcoholic, you know what I'm talking about. There's the relapse, and this is kind of an important part to the story where you make bad decisions. You're not a perfect person. It makes the struggle more real, relatable, authentic, and what you achieve even better by contrast. Okay, so he goes home to find out his Uncle Ben has been murdered. So he's filled with rage. So he's gonna put on his costume and go and find the person who killed his uncle. And he does catch him. And then he's horrified to discover the person that killed his uncle was the same person that ran past him in the TV station. What a tragic story. He can't believe himself. He blames himself. This is it. And so from this point forward, he now knows how to use his power and explains a lot about who he is and why he struggles in his life. And then those words that you've heard before, with great power. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the resurrection part. The resurrection where he learns his really important lesson. So Peter swears never to use his power for self-gain and to be in service of others. So with great power also comes great responsibility. So when I ask people, how did Spider-Man become Spider-Man? Most people say because he was bitten by a radioactive spider. That changed his life, but it wasn't that. It was his uncle dying and his role in that made him who he is. That was his defining moment. So this is the framework. This is the thing you probably want to take a picture of, but we'll see this one more time at least. So you all here have a superpower. I'll call it your gift because superpower sounds really self-important, but it's your superpower in the language and vernacular of comic books. But what makes you interesting, complex, unique is not your superpower, in my opinion. It's your vulnerabilities. It's your character flaws that really, when you embrace, is your true strength. So we have a backstory, we have an inciting incident, We have a relapse and we have the resurrection. And if this sounds familiar, it's Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Dan Harmon's Story Circle, and every other person who's done some version of it again. These are the 4 components that you need to tell your story, and we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. So I have broken this down now into 7 steps, being mindful of my time. I think I'm doing okay on pacing here, okay? It is my belief that your purpose in life is to be happy, and that happiness and joy comes from discovering what your gift is and sharing it with the world. I really believe this. Whether you believe in God, some other divine power, the cosmos, the universe, energy, karma, Mother Nature, whatever it is, I believe you're designed to do something that very few people can do. So we spend our entire life searching for what this thing is, and some of us find it. Last night at dinner, we had the most interesting character. I call him a character, but he was our waiter. He had a power mullet, and he was kind of like a dry sense of humor. He was making fun of us, but not at the same time, we liked him. And I said to the rest of the table, he missed his life's calling waiting his table. He should be out making films or doing something, because that's such a unique person. Okay, so the gift looks something like this. I'm still working on this. This is a work in progress, so if you don't like this, just change it for whatever works for you. Now, many of you think, I found my gift. I'm a magician with numbers. Check me out. And I believe that's your talent, your skill, right? So your gift, your true gift, your superpower, if you will, is the center of this Venn diagram, where you have physical gifts. Like, some of you are really tall, some of you are really skinny, some of you have a really deep voice. And those are the natural things we think of as our physical gifts. But the opposite can be true too. Something that you can think is something you've hated about yourself physically can also be your gift. And the people that you see on YouTube have figured that out. They really have, the ones with a big following. So the talent and the skill is the thing that you spend time harnessing, focusing, developing, learning. And then there's the things that most of us do not pay any attention to, which is the things that distract you, the things that capture your mind and your attention, your passion and your interest. When you can bring all those 3 together and deliver to the market that is designed for, you achieve your superpower. I think I figured out what mine is, and that's why I'm here right now. Okay, so here we go. Step number 1, we gotta find your gift, okay? And these are all those parts. So what we need to do is we need to make a giant list, okay? And we won't have time to do it because this is not a workshop format. I wish it were. What I want you to do is just write some of this down and begin the journey today, okay? So I want you, here's the prompt here. That's why there's a little pencil in the corner on a note card. Write down 100 things that might be your superpower, and do not stop until you get to 100. The first 20 will be the most obvious things. 20 to 60 will be hard. 60 to 100 will be near impossible. We just keep writing. The whole point to get to 100 is to not edit. You will not be able to edit. You're going to come up with things that you never thought possible. So my recommendation to you is clear your agenda, sit in a room, have an adult beverage, some music, and just sit there and get in touch with who you are. Become aware of all those things that make you you. And we're looking for things that are not obvious, some things that are weird, idiosyncratic things, maybe some hobbies or interests that you have. Things that you do where you lose track of time. People could call that like a flow state. We've all had that when we kind of wake up and snap out of our flow state and realize 3 hours have gone by. Anybody have that experience from time to time? For me, it's like on Pinterest. I'm like, oh my God, it's 4 in the morning, what am I doing? Or it's mid-journey. Like, just one more render. I'm gonna tell the robot who's boss right now. I'm gonna fix this, okay? And the things that you pay attention to that no one else pays attention to. And there's some clues here. And I heard this from a person I just interviewed. His name is Michael Ventura. He said he heard this from someone else. I'm gonna share it with you. Whatever you complain about a lot is usually a clue as to what you care about. So your complaint is your calling. Like, whatever it is that you complain so much about that you hate, it's probably because you have a very strong opinion about it and you're particular about that. And for each and every single one of us, it's something different. And I heard this from a speaker in the Philippines who also shared a story about how he heard it from someone else. Is when we talk about what your passion is, it's very difficult to know what your passion is. It sounds so weighty, it's like this big thing on your shoulder. So he's like, if you look at passion as an anagram and you move the letters around, passion is I pass on,
What is it that you want to leave behind for others? And then all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier. So if you have children, you're like, what's your passion, Jimmy, Bobby, Mary? They're like, well, I don't know. I don't know, Mom. I don't know, Dad. What is it you want to leave behind for others long after you're gone? Number 2. Okay, I believe this, that true strength is like a coin. It has 2 sides. What you want to talk about all the time is what you're strong at. What you generally hide is what you're weak at, and those are your vulnerabilities. But in bringing those 2 together, you become real, relatable, authentic, and very, very attractive. We know that when people talk about all their success, fame, and fortune, and how great they are, do we like those people? Are we drawn to them, or are we repelled by them? Mostly repelled, but then what do? We hide all our garbage. We really do. We edit everything out in our stories. We don't let people in. And automatically people think we're being fake. We're hiding something, obviously. So there's this quote from Brene Brown: staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience true connection. This is going to be more difficult for the men in the room because we have a model for success. It looks like some alpha bro. And we have to let that go. We just have to. I mean, some of you are like, I don't know what you mean. Okay? So we have to start to identify what makes us human. Carl Jung talks about it as the shadow self. But it's all your character flaws and your struggles that make you a real person and really likable, believe it or not. So what I want you to do is write down 100 things once again that you don't like about yourself. Maybe things that you're teased in school, something that people bully you for. Maybe something that your mom and dad ride you on all the time. Or maybe something you wish were different about yourself. The things that care figured out how to love all parts of him and show that. There's a scene in the films with Iron Man where they're like, don't tell people who you are. And they asked Tony Stark during a press conference, he goes, I'm gonna confirm the rumors, I am Iron Man. Smash cut, end of this movie. He just tells it. So his life becomes easier because he doesn't have to hide a secret identity. Whereas Peter Parker is in constant fear, someone will figure out who he is and hurt his family. He has a lot to protect. So he lives a dual life. And most heroes do that. So when we embrace these 2 parts of strengths and weaknesses, we become a whole human and not a whole human. We become complete. There's nothing missing. Okay, and so what happens when we're out of sync, when the persona is so different than our true self? Let's explore that. And I love this character. This is my favorite superhero of all time. It's not even a superhero, it's probably an anti-hero. Dr. Bruce Banner, one of the smartest men in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's also the Hulk, and they're at war with each other. And I love the concept of the character because it's a split personality, manifested as 2 different characters, and they're fighting for control. The Hulk says puny Banner, and Banner thinks of the Hulk as a raging monster. And so when the ego pushes the persona, how people see you, and the real you apart, and some of us have experienced this, mostly in junior high and high school, myself, trying to show up and pretend I'm somebody else, denying my own ethnicity, my culture, my language, my people. A lot of unhappiness there, okay? All right. So what we do is we smash these 2 things together, in the words of Hulk, smash them together, and I want you to find your 2-word brand. And I just want to say this as a caveat, it will take time to do this. It requires imagination and creativity and a lot of freaking self-awareness. So some people would just want to pump it out, like, here's my 2-word brand. I'm like, okay, high self-awareness probably, or maybe not. Not super creative, and so there's some criteria. I've done this exercise before, there's some criteria for you to think about. But before I do that, I'm going to share with you some 2-word brands you might know. So once again, let's see how smart you are. Insanely Great, what company is this? Oh, really? Table front? Straight A students? Nothing? Insanely Great, what brand is it? It's not a person, it's a brand, it's a big company. Really big company. One of the biggest companies. Apple. Apple, Steve Jobs, insanely great. And I think this 2-word combination is insanely genius. I don't know if you remember Steve Jobs and how crazy this guy was. He's the kind of person who said they were developing the iPad. He walked in the room, he's like, make it an iPhone. That's how the iPhone was born. It was supposed to be a tablet first. And I'm sure they said some nice things about him as soon as he left the room, the engineers. He's also the kind of person who would fly to Italy and select literally the marble that's going to go into the Apple Store. This person's insane. But they're insanely great because they pay attention to things so you don't have to. It feels rewarding to open an Apple package. Do you know that? Like, most plastics frustrate people. You touch it and it just falls apart, but not before you want to open it. And they hire like packaging designers and study origami so that every part of this makes sense. It's a beautiful experience. And then you open a Dell, not the same thing. Insanely great. They're so obsessed with details, they're insane. They even design the innards of your products, the phone and the laptops, to look good on the inside. Something nobody sees. Insanely great. That's the focus and attention to detail they have. Delightfully tacky. Does anybody know what brand or company this is?
IKEA.
What's that?
IKEA.
Good guess, not close, but good guess. Delightfully tacky. Anybody know? Anybody know? Huh? Host it? No? Delightfully tacky. That was pretty clever though. Pretty clever. You should be an ad guy. Okay. Hooters. Oh, you said it? You gotta say it louder. I was trying to help you out. Like, delightfully tacky. All right. Curiously Strong. What company is this? What brand? Altoids. Perfect. See, Curiously Strong. It's like strange combination of words put together make a very unique thing. And what's awesome about these two-word pairings is it tells a whole story. This is what we would consider the tip of the iceberg of the brand story. Is what I want you to do, because when you have to make hard decisions and distill down your essence, your purpose, your meaning, your uniqueness into two words, it'll force you to tell it really simply. And that's the beauty of this, if I may say so myself. So anyways, so here are two words that I use to describe myself, and when people caught wind of this, they started giving me all kinds of suggestions, right? I create content, I'm talking about marketing, I'm doing public speaking, but people don't believe me when I tell them I'm painfully shy, I'm a wallflower. Doing things like this give me tremendous anxiety. I've worked through some of this, so I explain it as I'm a loud introvert. I'm an introvert who knows how to leverage and write content for social media to build a massive following. I know how to do that. So I introduce myself as I'm a loud introvert. And some people see that I have a very sharp personality. I'm critical, I'm very direct, so they say you're a charming razor blade. But these things are unique and memorable, and my wife looks at that, she's like, the internet knows you really well, honey. They really did. And then somebody said, you're the business Buddha. I love that too. So there are 4 things that you must check off the list when you come up with your two-word brand. Some people create two-word pairings that are funny and they're super unique, but not even true. So the first part of your two-word brand is must be true. It must be you, and it must be unique to you. Okay? Don't come up with 2 words that mean the same thing. Somebody said creative designer. Like, designers are creative. It didn't find anything interesting about that. And then when you find something that's unique and true, it needs to be desirable. Like, I like this, and it adds value to my story. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna use this two-word brand to tell almost all of your stories. And I'll show you an example in a little bit, okay? So one person that was in my group, she came up with something even better than I could have suggested. She came up with a one-word brand. If 2 is good, 1 is even better than 2. And how did she do that? She smashed 2 words together. She's a grandmother, does branding, so she's a brand mother. So good. So good. Sometimes the student exceeds the teacher. So here's your homework, right? What is your two-word brand? And remember, it must meet this criteria. Some of you will do this, you'll come up with some unique, wacky things that are not true, that are not valuable or desirable. It's not a random thing. It's a very intentional exercise of figuring out who you are and communicating that to the world. Number 4. I'm at a 10-minute mark here, I think I'm good. Okay, number 4 is why we should embrace tragedy, trauma, trials, and tribulations, because all stories need conflict. No conflict, no story, boring, no one cares. So I was thinking about this recently, and I was like looking at all these characters. Black Panther's father was blown up in a bomb, terrorist attack. Superman's whole world was exploded. And what's more tragic about that, his parents tried to warn the entire civilization. So he is, for a period of time, the last of his kind, an alien thrown into a foreign planet, living and hiding amongst the people. Iron Man's parents were killed. He's an alcoholic. They don't talk about this in the movies, but in the comic, the source material, he's an alcoholic. The costume becomes his addiction. It's horrible. He goes through a horrible bout. Daredevil, Matt Murdock's origin, I don't know if you know this. He's an orphan. He grew up amongst nuns. His mom is a nun, having him out of wedlock. Yeah, it's dark stuff. Vision's father was a homicidal maniac robot. The Hulk, father was abusive. Black Bolt killed both of his parents when he spoke a word. Just obliterated them. He lives with that. And Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered outside the theater by a common criminal. Stories need conflict. And then I started to think about this. Do you know what the difference between a hero and a villain is? Do you know? This is true about you too, by the way.
What they do with that?
What did they do with what?
What they do with that conflict? What they do with that
100%. 100%. So they all have adversity and trauma. How they process that. The hero draws from that, defines their purpose from it, gains strength from the trauma. They're transformed by it to do better. Look at Peter Parker, look at Bruce Wayne. They take responsibility and they grow from it. The villain in the story is victimized by it and blames others for it. Never takes responsibility. This is classic hero stuff, storytelling, everybody. Make sense, everybody? There's a small sliver of a difference in terms of what they do with it, but a world of outcomes difference. So, in your story, adversity is your ally, and you want to use this in all forms of your storytelling. I'm going to show you one example here. I mentioned to you I'm a loud introvert, so it's awesome to share your accolades, your wins, your success, but that's really boring to most people because they think, as the kids say, you're flexing on them. You're flexing, Dad. That's what my kids always say. So I have to find the way to bring in the struggle part. So many years ago, I won an Emmy, and I was super scared to win it because they told me I had to give, no, they don't say you have to, you get to give a 30-second speech. And most people want to talk forever. I didn't want to talk at all. So I wrote a whole story about that, and the results were night and day different between me posting like, hey guys, I'm a 2-time Emmy Award winning designer, as opposed to telling the story about how my knees are shaking, waiting to be called up on stage. It's a dark story. It has a happy ending though, right? And someone who's done this better than most people is comedian Joe Coy. He has milked his entire life, the trauma with his mom, and growing up Filipino, and Vicks vapor rub solving all problems, and he's told this story over and over again, so he become phenomenally successful. Hassan Minhaj has done the same to talk about his Indian past, growing up in Sacramento and getting super nerdy, and also sharing the story about how he didn't identify as Indian and hated on his younger sister. Pretty powerful stuff. So adversity is your ally, your vulnerabilities are your strength. So let me put this in a different way. When you're looking for a way to write a story, think about it like this. Here's another prompt for you. My friends think I'm great at something. This is what your friends know you for. But what they really don't know is that I struggle with this thing. So most people, when I'm introduced on stage, are like, he's great at marketing and branding, and he's great at building an audience and public speaking. That's what they think. But what they don't understand is all the work that has to happen behind the scenes. I try to tell that story as much as possible. And every time I do that, every time I share that on LinkedIn, on social media, the view counts, engagement goes through the roof. So that's a clue for you. Number 5. We want to create multi-dimensional stories. We want to build a world, and worlds need more than just you and your story. So we want to figure out who your supporting characters and cast are. So we want to talk about your mentor. Who'd you learn from? And it's not always the same for each of you. Sometimes it's your parents, sometimes it's a teacher in school, a coach in sports, someone that you read a book and never met, someone you have a coach, a friend who shared things with you. So in this way, you humble yourself and you share the gifts that were given to you, and you highlight those things. Superheroes have sidekicks. They're your partners in crime. Casey Neistat has Dan Mace. Gary Vaynerchuk has D-Rock. And they tell stories and they make stories together. They're collaborators. And Dwayne Johnson, oddly enough, has Kevin Hart. And they make the oddest couple, but hilarious comedic material here. It's awesome. So think about who your sidekicks are. Highlight them, bring them into your story. So when I tell people about my mentor and the people I learn from, my audience loves it. Like, Chris, you're so humble. You share the spotlight with everybody. So true heroes do that. They don't stand in the spotlight, they shine the spotlight. And believe it or not, the city is a character in your story. The city in which you were born in, and the city that you choose to live in. Because when you say, I'm from LA, I'm from Las Vegas, I'm from New York, we all have an idea about who you are. So those are very strong clues about who you are. So look into that. Okay, number 6, we're almost here. Neil, did you come up here? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. You cannot have true fans without true critics. Most of us avoid the blowback, the backlash, hashtag cancel. And when you do that, you can't really grow a following. So what I'm telling you right now is you have to learn how to pick a fight, because being safe is boring and very forgettable. And here's a meme for you here, right? And you gotta believe in something even if it means sacrificing half of everything. So, who is your nemesis, your arch rival? And it's usually the exact mirror opposite of you. And in some cases, it's a former mentor. The reason why I got into making YouTube is because my good friend Jose Caballero invited me to do YouTube videos, which I did not want to do. But we're so radically different. He's a loud, sloppy, messy extrovert. He describes himself as an obnoxious Puerto Rican. And so he would introduce us, even though I'm not Chinese, we're Chino Latino. I'm like, Jose, that's offensive. But that's who he was. And we had this great spark and energy, and I learned so much from him. I would not literally be here if he hadn't pushed me to do this. And then we became rivals. He became my nemesis. Not like literally, but figuratively, because everything he stood for, I stood against. I was like, put your head down, let's do the work, let's get better at this. He's like, let's have fun, let's try to get all spiritual, like let's help people make money. You see the differences there? So who's your nemesis? It's usually mirror opposite of you. Superman's nemesis is Lex Luthor. Superman's strong, Lex Luthor's weak. Superman is kind of dumb. Lex Luthor is a genius. Who are the villains? The more, the better. When you learn how to embrace who you're against, you'll be super successful. I'm gonna ask you this question. How many of you know of a person named Andrew Tate like 2 years ago? 2 years ago, nothing. This guy came out of nowhere and he owns the internet. It's incredible. And so whether you like him or not, you gotta respect the game that he plays. So when you figure out who your villains are, give them a name. So that allows the audience to tap in like, yeah, I'm against them too. So if I'm against them, I must be with you. So he calls the machine, the system, the media, it's a broad blanket statement that he doesn't even define as the matrix. And so the key to naming your enemy is to find something we already know and you just twist it just a little bit. We know the matrix, he describes it. And I'll give you some examples right now. Do you guys know a little soap company that's not so little anymore? I think they're San Diego based. They're called Dr. Swatch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's their enemy? Who's the villain? And this is genius copywriting here. Okay? If you're a smoker and you've lost someone to cancer, what do we call those companies? The cigarette company, what do we call them? Big tobacco. And if you're against what's happening to the environment, we call it big oil. These geniuses at Dr. Squatch made up an enemy that doesn't even exist, big soap. And in doing so, they made me aware. I'm like, oh my God, I am buying those detergents. Big soap's got me. I don't like big tobacco, I don't like big oil, so I must be against big soap. I'm a Dr. Squatch fan now, and I buy their products. Dove, their enemies, traditional beauty standards. That women need to be put in a box. And then they launched a campaign on that and got a tremendous amount of traffic and interest. So what do you stand for? What do you stand against? What do you believe in and champion? And who and what stands in your way? Give them a name. Okay, I think I'm out of time here, so let me, how do I turn that off, Neil? Okay. Look at this. Can you turn that off for me? Okay, so the way that you pick a fight is you just start putting it into words. Oatly says it's like milk, but made for humans. Adidas says we're against the idea of limitation, so impossible is nothing. For us, we say private art school without the crippling debt, where shots are fired here, everybody. That's what you want to do. Patagonia says we're in business to save our home planet. Pretty powerful stuff. So here's your prompt here. We're in business to do something, and for this purpose. So I want you to pick a verb, but a very strong verb. They're not just here to help. They're not here to eliminate. They're here to save, not Earth, our home planet. If that's what you care about, which I do, then I get the message. Okay, part 7. You need to develop your signature style, your icons and your lexicons. We'll skip this part. Sorry, develop your personal style. Okay. People say, like, what is style? And I love this definition of style. It's you making consistently the same mistake over and over again. If you draw a certain way, that becomes your style. If you drew perfect anatomy, you'd be boring. It's the abstraction of that. So start thinking about your personal style. So for me, I pick a certain number of typefaces and I just live with them. I'm Ride or Die Helvetica, Futura, and Champion Gothic. Those are my typefaces. And then pick some colors. I'm super lazy. I just pick colors that Pantone says this is the color of the year. People don't even use it. I don't know why. So they got this color called Living Coral. That's what I pick. And then there's like forest and forest biome. And so if you look at my feed, it's all green and pink, or coral and forest. Okay. And then you start to define your aesthetic, your fashion, your clothing. And if you do it consistently, all the superheroes have the uniform. Superman's red cape, Spider-Man's bug eyes, the web pattern. Those things make him him. So for men more than for the women in the room, I'm being a generalist here by saying this, find one weird, wacky thing that can be you. It could be a weird colored pair of glasses, a hat, something else. You notice Neil, he wears his cap backwards all the time. All the time. So consistently making the same mistake becomes your style. I used to not wear a cap, but my guys are like, Chris, we have the lights so because there's like shining ball of chrome up there. I start wearing the hat. Now I can't go anywhere without the hat because people are like, well, don't recognize you. Put the hat back on. Okay? So what's the one thing you can do, or an item, or accessory that you can use to create your signature style? That's it. So here's a summary. Your 2-word brand, your origin story, so that you can do world building. And I said that you're going to see this twice, so here it is if you missed it the first time. And then the second part. Some resources for you. Sorry, my bad. Okay. Faster fingers, everybody. Resources. Okay, here we go. These are the books. Picture, okay. And in the words of Stan Lee, true believers, Excelsior, I'm out of here, Q&A time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Came up here, normally I give ethos to the speaker. I totally spaced this, but for those of you who don't know, like how I met Chris was through his YouTube channel. How many subscribers does the YouTube have now? Over 2 million YouTube subscribers that they built over the past decade now, almost a decade? 7 years, yeah. And if you don't follow Chris, please follow him on social. I think he's almost 900,000 followers, and it's just crazy to see. He didn't even need the ethos because obviously he just saw it in the actual talk. But I guarantee you, what we just talked about here, nobody in our industry is talking about. I will tell you that with 100% confidence, right? And so I made a quick note, and I want to ask Chris this feedback, okay? All right, Chris. When you made that statement at the end, we're in this to help, and so I thought of many of us, we're in this to help the middle class achieve financial freedom. What is that? Would that be a good statement?
I would say that's draft number 1. I would work on that because we're in business to help. Help is a soft word. I would go more extreme and find the most extreme version of that, and then you can walk it back from there.
Okay. So, and I thought of like when he said enemies, I always say this, and me and my brother said this for the past 10 years. We said big banks. I don't think we were even aware that we were saying big banks, but we are the independent mortgage company who's against the big bank and Wall Street and things like that. That's our enemy, and we want to help the average person, or the middle class. So I think that some of us have been doing these things by accident, but now you can kind of refine them more. And if anybody has a specific question, I think what we'll do here, because we're short on time, is Chris, are you going to hang out with us for this morning?
I'm gonna be here.
Okay, so Chris has actually been gracious enough to be here all day. And I just wanted to really say, Chris, that like, you know, I'm super excited for what you shared with us today. Every time you speak, it makes me think of so many new things, and I'm lucky to call you a friend. Man. Thank you so much. Thank you, man.
You label your enemy Wall Street, right? Or a big bank. Here's a tip. And I hate to say this because I don't like him. Take a page from Trump. I think Trump's a bully. What he does is he makes names and he teases people, but they become super catchy. Like you can't stop thinking about it. So instead of saying Wall Street, kind of like Sam Horn writes about this in her book. What you do is like say Wall Street, you replace the first syllable with every letter through the alphabet. So Ball Street, Call Street, Doll Street. You just keep going through it, and eventually you find something that's really funny. So she wrote a book on how to deal with difficult people, and somebody told her that's a really boring title. He goes, explain what you do. Well, and she goes on the explanation part. So he says, basically, you're like teaching people how to have better relationships, and it feels like a martial art. So she called her book Tongue Fu, how to deal with difficult people without becoming one. See the genius in that? Kung Fu, you know, eventually goes. So if you can make up a new word that sounds very familiar, you will just own it. So Wall Street, everybody knows, but if you can change it somehow, make a two-word into one, change one syllable, you're gonna be onto gold, and you'll own it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right, guys, give me one support for that time. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we have another incredible speaker coming up. I know some of us need to take